Hey guys, welcome to another episode of East Coast Rams podcast. I am your host Ashton with my awesome co-host Zach. Zach, how are you enjoying the bye week? We got ourselves a little mini podcast, kind of breaking down everything. We were waiting until later in the week in case if they traded something. Knowing our luck, they'll probably trade for someone right after we finish the podcast. But how you doing in yeah, how are things going?
Everything's going great. I feel a little recouped a little bit of, being able to take a break off with the Rams, kind of getting everything resituated and kind of figuring out, how the Rams are going to move forward. Kind of gave us a very non-stressful Saturday or Sunday, especially with, the 49ers losing to Kansas City. And yeah, so everything's going great.
Yeah, Zach, let's go ahead and kind of dive into the bye week news. The biggest news we've gotten hasn't been any trades. The Rams lost out on the Christian McCaffrey situation, which they were very active in. What's your just quick takeaways from that situation? Apparently, the Rams offered something similar to the 49ers. A lot of media elements are trying to say they lost out because they didn't have a fourth. No, they lost out because they didn't want to match the fourth. We had possibilities to match it, and we just chose not to.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's probably the smart move. I mean, I know, Christian McCaffrey is a really great player, and I think we all wanted him in the room because I think he could bring a different element to the offense. He's such a versatile player, and he can be a triple threat, whether that's pass rushing, using his legs or even catching the ball. I think he's a really well-rounded running back, and I think he would have done great with us. But at the same time, we don't want to give up everything. We know we're kind of in a tight spot as it is, and we're really looking at other positions as well, not just in the running back position. So trying to find someone in the pass in the edge position on the defensive side, and really just looking at maybe what are other options that may not cost us as much capital, I think is a smart move.
Yeah, I definitely think it was one of those things where they had a contingency if they got McCaffrey for what they were asking for, that they were going to use some of the future next year picks to try to get a, let's say, moderate level edge rusher, kind of like a Robert Quinn, someone that you could get for relatively cheap, uh, kind of bring in reinforcements for that position and get McCaffrey in the process. But it looks like Carolina was asking too much. The 49ers were willing to provide it, and we were not. So we ended up losing out. But in good news, Zach, we will be getting Van Jefferson, Brian Allen, and Troy Hill all back, with Traven Howard and Bobby Brown seeming like they may come back. What's your kind of reactions to getting those players back?
Especially for having Van Jefferson back and then Brian Allen. I think those are the two biggest players to come back for our team. Number one, our offensive line has been very diminished over the last 7 weeks, and getting our center, who really is the communicator for this offensive line, bringing him back, I think um, is definitely going to um, improve things, whether that's just by communication or helping protect him. And I know we'll talk about the offensive line in a little bit, but I think he just brings that presence that really I think has been missing over the last really the last 6 weeks since he's been out.
Yeah, it definitely helps with flexibility and depth on the line, getting him back, and he's been a really good center. Hasn't been the greatest center in the league, but he's been really good when he has been in, and I think we have really missed him, especially with pressure coming up the middle a lot this season. Let's talk about Kyron Williams. He gets put back on the active roster. It seems like he won't be starting for another week or two, maybe. Zach, are you looking forward to Kyron Williams? And with let's be honest. Tell me if you disagree, Zach. It seems like Cam Akers will be traded. So it's going to be Kyron Williams in a backfield between him and Henderson. Like, do you think this will be a good backfield? Do you think the rookie will provide any spark to this running game?
I think so. I mean, we saw how he was in preseason, and I think there was a lot of hype for him. And I think McVay has even hyped him and has hyped him this past week, kind of noting like this is the presence that they want in that running back room. So I'm really excited to see what. He's going to show once he's able to return. Henderson is still a player who I think we can rely on to get the yards we need, but is not necessarily the most explosive player. I'm really looking for Kyron Williams to be that kind of explosive back, who can break the tackles and get us that extra yardage that we've kind of been missing over the last 2-3 years. What about we kind of skipped over Van Jefferson coming back. I mean, he's kind of a key player when it comes to the receiving core, especially the familiarity he has with Matthew Stafford, and just being able to play more of that long ball game that I feel like has also been missing. What's your take on getting Van Jefferson back?
I think it's a really good step for our offense. We've been missing that extra element from the wide receiving core outside of one good game last against the Panthers. Really, our wide receiving core has been not doing great. Robinson had a good game, but like he hasn't picked up, and I feel like Van Jefferson could have that breakout season. Um, and really put it all together. I felt like last year was kind of a disappointing year in the sense of having that huge breakout season. He was good, don't get me wrong, but it still wasn't like 1,000 yard good. He had his role, so hopefully if there's opportunity in this offense for someone to take over that wide receiver two position, if Robinson keeps on not producing like we think he should, maybe that connection with Stafford could be something special if he can continue to stay healthy after this injury.
Yep, I agree.
So, Zach, we've been waiting for the trade deadline to come up and nothing has happened. What do you think the Rams are doing? At least from my perspective, I think they were really pushing for McCaffrey for early, kind of like before the bye week trade, and that's the only one they were looking for. Everything else, I think they've been waiting until after Sunday because I believe Les Need put some nuggets out there saying that we want to kind of see the situation of the team, so I think the team is a little worried about trading away future assets if they're 3-4, which is interesting because I almost feel like you have to go all in no matter what. Even if you're 3-4, you're going to be losing Aaron Donald in 2 years, and I don't see the point in kind of laying down the white flag for this year and keeping your picks. Like we're going to be depleted no matter what, and we're going to have to make big moves. That's why I've always supported going for someone like McCaffrey, going for someone like Brian Burns. Even though I don't think Burns is actually available, but like Chubb would be an interesting decision, even though he's a 1 year rental. Where do you think the Rams land, Zach? And do you think they're going to make any trades? Could this be kind of wish casting and we go into Monday and they don't do anything?
I coming back from some of the press conferences that we had this week. I mean, one of them was from McVay, and he was asked point blank, where are we at with the trade deadline? That day, everyone is kind of smirking that that he gave a smirk after he says, "Hey, we don't have anything in the works with us, but you never know." And I actually think that was kind of true. I mean, obviously, nothing has come out since that happened. I think on Wednesday, we're recording on Friday, so. I I think that we're going to wait till Monday. I don't think any news is going to break between now and until Monday. I think we're going to, if we want to look at somebody like Chubb, I think we're going to have to see how the Broncos do. If the Broncos lose another game, I think it's a better chance that we might be able to pick up someone like him. I'm not saying that we couldn't, even if they win, but I think we're looking at some of these other teams to see if if what their records like, and is it going to be more valuable or less valuable depending on that. I mean, it's all trading away picks, and they're going to be very strategic on how they do that.
Not to mention the team itself is a little not completely cap strapped. We have ways to work around it, but waiting another week is one more week you don't have to pay that player's salary on whatever you agree on, right?
And
So
especially if we're looking at Friday, I mean, there's no reason to pick someone
yeah,
up when they're not going to play on Sunday.
yeah, they no one will go out there and be able to play effectively on a new team. Even one week, it's very hard. Like almost no player can do that.
I mean,
It's very rare.
we saw that with Christian McCaffrey and the 49ers. I mean, yes, he played and he didn't do a terrible job, but he wasn't in there long enough to know all the plays and be in there for the period of time that he's used to because of that unfamiliarity with the 49ers playbook.
Uh, Not to mention, talking about Brian Burns, the Panthers did come out and say they got offered two future first round picks and they turned it down. Zach, how much?
Which
Let's be honest. We know that was the Rams, right? Can we all agree that no other team offered both future first round picks? And if you're willing to do that, you would offer your first round pick this year if you had one.
I think so, and I think the and some of the things that I've heard across the way is that the Rams were going to do that because then they could start thinking about building a team around him instead of building the team around Aaron Donald, because eventually in the next 2 to 3 years we're going to lose Aaron Donald, and they're going to have to start thinking about, all right, now who's the next player that we kind of build our team around, build our defense around, and so finding those players is going to be crucial, and I think that could have been a Burns thought.
Do you think he's worth trading our second this year and the two future first?
It's hard to say. I mean, the one problem with the NFL, and we've seen it time and time again this year, is that one injury can just completely make or break. I think he's an excellent player, and I think he could be great with the Rams. But it's so hard to kind of guess what the future is. I mean, if it's in a perfect world and no injuries, I think he would be great. But you also have to think of you have to think about everything, and I tend to do, and that may be some reasons why I wouldn't always throw away high picks, um, but yeah, I think he's a great player, and I think he's worth a high value that's being asked for him.
I think you have to ask yourself, are you going in the next 2 years in the first round or the second round next year? Are you going to find a Brian Burns talent? Not very easily, right? And if you can get him and take out that risk, um, and you're trying to win now, and you get him with Aaron Donald for 2 years, I think that's a slam dunk. Again, I'd rather trade for an offensive player right now. I think the defense is fine. I understand the arguments that if we had a good pass rush, we would definitely have a top five defense. I understand that. And that's why I'm like, I get why people want Brian Burns, and I do see like how that can work out in the long term, especially with 80 leaving in 2 years. So I think it would be a good move. I just never thought he was available, and it kind of shows the Panthers turning him down, and the Rams are now in the market, and there's rumors of them talking to the Broncos and also the Jaguars about Josh Allen. It just kind of tells me they're past Brian Burns, and the Panthers aren't going to really deal him unless if someone comes out with a ridiculous offer.
Yeah,
All right. Let's kind of talk about Cam Akers real quick. Zach, what's we asked this last week, what is going on with Cam Akers? Not playing for a second week in a row. It seems like he's not going to be a Ram after this week.
I mean it's so crazy. You would think someone would have picked him up by now, but I think at the same time, and they've done this before. I mean, kind of with with Goff and things like that, where I don't know how much value they're going to get out of Akers as far as getting picks and things like that, just
A
because of
six
how.
rounder.
Yeah,
A
I
six
mean,
rounder at most.
at most, and for a player who in 2020 was like looking to be a star-studded running back, it's crazy to think that things have completely become so broken that he's not even practicing with the team right now. Even though there have been, McVay has been open saying, I don't think, we're completely closed the door on that option. He could come back, but right now we're kind of seeking a trade, which is,
It,
um,
that's coach talk for saying we're not going to outright cut him. So you guys better offer a trade now because we'll just keep him on the roster and just waste a roster spot if it means no one's going to try to trade for him because they think we're going to cut him anyways.
yeah. So I don't know. I mean, there's reports on, the reason is he's acting more like a Pro Bowler veteran than he is at what he's been, which is not performing great. So who knows what the issue is? I kind of feel bad for Akers in some ways. Especially just not being able to play. I mean, he can't even put anything on tape to show other teams that he still has his ability to run the ball and efficiently. So, and just not to not even have another weapon for the Rams is just kind of crazy. But I trust in McVay. McVay knows what he's doing. He's brought us to the promised land, and so we're just going to have to trust in McVay and trust in Snead and see where the things go.
Yeah, ultimately, we don't know what's going on with him. We don't know his reasoning, and it's up to him whether or not he wants to put that out there or not. I tend to be most of the time player oriented versus team oriented when it comes to stuff like this. I think values are consistently undervalued by the team. Um, by most teams, it's not just a Rams thing. So whether or not he's in the wrong or in the right, I hope he gets an opportunity somewhere where he can shine and continue his career. Let's kind of go straight into quarter three and kind of preview the 49ers. Uh, yeah, the 49ers a little beat up, Zach. But again, that has not stopped them. I believe one of the games last year, they were missing like half of their starters and they still beat us. I think that was our first game against them.
I
Uh,
mean, they
w-
didn't have Trent Williams the first time around.
yeah.
So, it's just one of those things where the 49ers seem to always they just play super well against the Rams, whether they're, great or not. It just seems like they just always have the Rams number.
Yeah, I mean, their scheme is very oriented to counter what McVay does. They have really good personnel to do it too. Great linebackers. That's a huge part about countering the kind of outside zone run and the play action off of that. Just very well built team, especially against us. And the question is, are we going to adjust? Are we going to adjust our defense to kind of counter that quick passing game? Because there's no point in pass rush because they're throwing it under like two 2 seconds against us. They don't do that against other teams, but they do that against us, and it consistently works. They do a lot of screens and a lot of quick passes. So, like, all right, make Jimmy G leave some of that open downfield and make Jimmy G beat you with his arm. He does not do that often against other teams. So if he can happen to have an off game against us for once, and our defense plays the shorter stuff and tries to focus on the run and the quick passes, if they beat us, they beat us doing that. But you got to make them uncomfortable, and I feel like we play into their game plan way more than we should. Another problem is we start off slow against the 49ers consistently. We always go down against them, and they are just a team built to ride a lead. They are not very well built to handle uh, coming back, especially like in the NFC Championship once we got a lead, they struggled mightily because they had to throw. and that's when we could actually put pressure and cause them to get off their game plan. Zach, what do you think are the keys to beating the 49ers this week?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's not like our defense isn't playing bad, really bad against the 49ers. The problem is that they're staying on the field too long. You mentioned it. They tend to do short passes. They do the screens, quick throws to get the ball out of Jimmy G's hands. And, the Rams have not always been set up to do that. But the Rams just have to play. They have to play better in the defense. There's so many times where we're getting into, they're really good against like third and short, third and one, third and two to stop the run and stop that. But they're really bad at like the third and 13s, which it always comes up, I feel like, in the 49ers games once or twice where it's third and 13, third and 16. And somehow Jimmy G is able to do a screen pass that, keeps the middle of the field open, and now they got a first down, and you're just like, what is happening? And so I
I
think
feel
that,
like a 50-yard Debo touchdown is almost required against us.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's exactly how it seems. Um, so I don't know. I think the key for the defensive side is to, you know, keep the pressure on Jimmy G. Try to prevent that short game and get off the field. But the Rams also have to make sure that their defense stays off the field for a period of time. Like, yes, it's good to say we can get three and out, whatever, a short window of possession for the 49ers offense. But really, our offense needs to play well so that the 49ers offense isn't coming back on the field. Because we want to keep our offense on as long as possible and score those touchdowns. So as far as the defense goes, keeping that short game really tight, I think that will improve. Making sure we tackle, that seems always to be a problem against the 49ers as well. Making sure that Devo doesn't break two tackles. Um, so that, as far as defensive goes, that's probably my keys to win for there.
Hmm. Well, Zach, who you have winning?
Well, it's tough, and I mean it obviously depends on a lot of matchups. Obviously, I feel like for me, I think the Rams are so tired of this narrative of we're always out. But the problem I feel like we also have is that McVay has that in his head, and so he's going to do. Sometimes he overthinks the situation, and he will try, when he just needs to take a step back, be his creative self, and just play the game like he would anybody else, and not be super worried about that 0-6 regular season or 0-7 regular season record that's currently going on with them. Uh,
I almost feel like he should give Liam the play calling duties for these games.
and it might make sense, and um, we'll kind of see how that goes. Do you think Christian McCaffrey is going to play a huge role against this in this game?
Mm, uh, I mean, I don't necessarily think.
I mean, we saw him during when they faced Carolina. He was a big reason why they ran down the field in the opening drive. After that, the Rams kind of seemed to be able to prevent him from doing anything else.
I don't know how they're going to use him in their system. First of all, I think they're going to try to do a lot of screen stuff with him. Probably not overly complicated because he's only been there for 2 weeks. So he can only in process so fast. So we're not getting the full like McCaffrey 49ers treatment yet, luckily. I think in 4 weeks he's going to be a lot more like dynamic and dangerous in that offense. Right now, they're going to do more basic runs with him, maybe some simple screens. So I expect to see stuff like that. Um, do I think he's going to make a huge imprint? I think he's going to be crucial. He's going to get a lot of first downs for him that I think they would have struggled to otherwise. So I think he will play a factor. It won't be a huge factor. I think Debo is going to be more of a big key to them winning than anyone else.
So going off that, then what about Jalen Ramsey? I mean, so during the Week 4 matchup, Samuel Debo was not even targeted a single time when Ramsey was in coverage, was in his coverage.
I mean, again, they don't even need to do anything with depth. Like everything they gave him was short screen passes or directly handing it off to him in creative sweeps and motions. So, like, and our defense has played into it. I think our offense has had a big issue with kind of letting up and not doing anything and not trying to change and kind of adapt. And the 49ers offense is just humming along, and our defense just kind of keeps on doing the same high shell, give them 15-yard buffers when they're throwing screens constantly and quick passes. So we'll see.
Okay. Well, so we've talked about the offense. Let's go to the defense. Let's talk to the offense a little bit. So we're kind of getting, like we talked about at the top, we're kind of getting a somewhat, more stable, slightly into the better hands of healthier offensive line with bringing Brian Allen back into the mix. So our offensive line is going to be left tackle Alaric Jackson, left guard Bobby Evans, center Brian Allen, right guard Ode Abushi, and then right tackle Rob Havenstein, who is the only O-line who has played, starting O-liner who's played every game so far. What is your thinking behind, like, how well do you think this offensive line is going to play, especially with kind of Alaric Jackson kind of moving into that left tackle role for Joe Noteboom, and then him kind of facing off against the like Nick Bosa?
I think he took Noteboom's job, to be honest.
I mean, that's his natural role, as being, in that tackle position compared
Yeah,
to where he was.
he looks fantastic as a tackle. He really does. He even looks good as a guard. So I kind of hope they trade for someone like Isaiah Wynn. We could put Wynn at left tackle and Alaric for this year at left guard, and next year I would be perfectly fine with him starting at left tackle. I just want to stop seeing Bobby Evans on this line. Don't get me wrong, I think he's fine practice squad player, but he should not be starting consistently. That's going to be a recipe for disaster. He constantly gives up pressures and sacks every game, and that's going to cause us issues. Uh, a lot of our turnovers have came off of him giving up pressure. So I just I think they will be better than the last 3 weeks, but that's not saying much. They haven't been great.
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, the last time in Week 4 when they faced him, uh, the 49ers got 7 sacks on Stafford. Um, so this
This
all
is a better line than that game.
for sure. The offensive line just has to play better to give them more time. If not, they need to adjust quickly. And I think sometimes Stafford tends to stay in the pocket too long, and he needs to roll out. I feel like a little bit more to give himself more time, and plus give him the option to throw away the ball when he's needed. Because as we saw, even in the I think it was the last game where he didn't necessarily get out of the pocket fully before he threw the ball away, and we were backed up even further.
Did we lose 2 or 3 of our linemen that 49ers game? I know we lost Noteboom, and
We lost Noteboom in the Panthers game.
oh, it was the beginning of the Panthers game? Okay,
Yeah,
then we must have lost
Who made that play when you were given the
the
nice
guard. We lost our guard then.
I think so. I think you're right for that one.
We've had too many O line injuries to keep track of.
Yeah,
So hopefully we have none this game. We stay healthy. Also, shout out to Ibushi. I think he's done solid too. Well, he hasn't been kind of like standout like Jackson, where Jackson just looks like a starter. I think Ibushi's proving to be a quality depth piece, kind of like how Noteboom would whenever he came in at guard.
for sure. Um, some other notes is that because we got Matt Skura, he's now the backup to Brian Allen, while Coleman Shelton is still out, which means that they put Jeremiah Coloni back into the practice squad. You know, Clooney did a great job for what he was. He did a good job for what he was kind of thrown in to do. So, just big shout out to him for taking that opportunity. And at least the Rams found it at least worthy to keep him kind of in the system by putting him back onto the practice squad.
I mean, I like him better than Bobby Evans.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Clooney was a guard, or maybe he was a center, um, but anyways, it's good that he's at least for kind of what he did, that he's still kind of with this team and not just put back into the police academy and things like that. Other than the offensive line, who do you think is who's going to step up, or who's going to be the star of this offense this week?
I actually think it could be Rivers if we end up Ronnie Rivers if Henderson keeps on having issues with this illness. Even then, I think he's probably going to get elevated because I don't think they just want. Um, I really don't think they just want two backs. They've rolled with it before, but that's with Henderson and Akers. Not just I don't know. I think Ronnie Rivers could play a key role. And then Cup. I mean, again, the offense kind of rolls through Cup. When he has a bad day, the offense tends to have a bad day. Hopefully, we can start having that wide receiver too kind of raise up to the situation if Cup can't ball out completely like he normally does. Um, and that's why Van Jefferson will be a big piece. I feel like it'll be either the running back, the head running back, or Van Jefferson that wins us this game.
Yeah, I think Van Jefferson's going to make a crucial play. Even if not, I mean, it just gives the Rams another weapon and another person that they're going to have to keep their eye on. Especially when I think Van Jefferson probably could have came back maybe even the week before the bye week, but just because they needed that availability because of the O-line issues, they decided just to put him on that short-term IR, so that so he made him unavailable until this week. But Cooper Kupp's going to have to face Jimmy Ward this time around. He did not have to during week 4, which he caught 14 passes for 122 yards. So it's going to be interesting in seeing if Jimmy Ward can kind of prevent some of that Cooper Kupp action, even though it's the matchup still is it more in favor in Kupp's spot.
Mm-hmm.
So other than that, any other notable injury reports that we should keep our eyes on as we head into Sunday?
I think Eric Armstead is out, so we'll see if that kind of helps out our O line a little bit. But for the most part, the 49ers are a little limping into this game injury wise, but that hasn't stopped them before. And I just don't see this offense being good enough to overcome their defense.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so what is it? So Deebo Samuels he has not participated in the last 2 days for a hamstring injury, but I think there's no reason if he's not, mostly available that he's not going to play. And then
Well, typically, I would say it's like 85% of the time or something like that. If you don't practice both Thursday and Friday, you won't play because that's indicating that the team feels like you're not healthy
yeah, I think the
enough
only
to
exception to that would
play.
be what concussion protocol.
Yeah,
Might be the
concussion
only
is
time.
separate, its own separate kind of monster.
And then their fullback, um,
Yeah, he's out too.
he's out.
Yeah.
Okay, so some of their weapons seem to be hit a little bit, so maybe that might be in the Rams' favor. I mean, if Debo for some reason is out, which we'll find out. I mean, we're doing this before the Friday injury report comes out. We'll see how that goes, but we expect him to play and be a big factor to that team.
If Debo is out, expect them to run the ball a lot.
Going back to your previous question on who I think the Rams or who I think is going to win this game, um, you know, we always say this is a podcast for the fans by the fans. So I'm gonna go in that we are going to win. It is going to be 21-17.
I think it will be 16-20 49ers. I just see this game being kind of like a brawl for most of it, and I think they kind of pull away in the fourth quarter.
Okay. Awesome. Well, the only other news that really kind of came out this week was just this whole debate going back on should you be on turf or should you be on grass, and Cooper Kupp was trying to be as diplomatic as he possibly could and just says he likes to play on the grass, which is understandable coming from his injury, and then a lot of the other injuries that have been happening over the last several years on turf fields.
These teams make millions and millions off of these players, and it would cost only like $1 million per stadium to upkeep grass. I'm sorry, like it's ridiculous that the NFL uses turf with the amount of money. I can understand some colleges, especially smaller schools, not being able to afford to upkeep grass. These NFL teams don't have the excuses, and turf has been proven to cause more soft tissue injuries. This shouldn't be a debate. This shouldn't be an issue. The only group of people that actively don't want to see grass is NFL ownership because they don't want to pay for it.
I mean, I don't. So I don't. I mean, I get why the grass is better and things like that, but how does it work for like maintaining in like a dome or like an enclosed area where there's no sunlight or anything like that? Is it more difficult? I would assume it's way more difficult to maintain grass. I mean, it will keep it drier so it's not a muddy pit, but it might be hard to upkeep those that are in a dome.
Yes, it's harder because you have to ship the grass back in and then kind of maintain it
Gotcha.
and then remove it after the game. But half of these stadiums are anyways preparing for grass because of the World Cup in a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Like they are not in a few weeks. Sorry, in a few years, because the U.S. is hosting the World Cup, and that's a thing that they have to do to qualify for hosting the World Cup is to have grass fields. They don't allow turf. Um, and these NFL stadiums that are going to be hosting these big games in 4 years has to do that. So they're going to have to do it anyways eventually. That's one of the contentions about SoFi because SoFi was technically too small to host World Cup games. So yeah, that's my kind of grass rant. It kind of drives me nuts because these teams make way too much money to complain about it.
Cool. Any final thoughts?
No. Big game. This is gonna kind of be the lynch point to the season for both teams. If you look at the records, 49ers being 3-4, going 3-5 is very hard to get back from. They did something similar last year, but that's very rare, right? Not a lot of teams can get back from 3-5. Uh, the Rams, same thing. Going 3-4, while it's not as bad as 3-5, it's still with how hard our schedule is. It's equivalent to a 3-5 for most regular teams. We have a lot of difficult teams coming up. We don't have any gimmies. We've already lost one game that we should have won in the Cowboys game. So like, we don't have any margin of error. So we have to win this, and it's going to decide our season. It's going to decide if we trade for some players. It's going to be interesting times.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's going to be great. I was just kind of looking through Twitter because Sean McVay is giving his kind of presser as we're wrapping up this conversation. Doesn't seem to be any big news. Brandon Powell is going to be listed as questionable today, but is expected to play. Kyron Williams is definitely not going to be activated. So And Sean McVay, it's noted that he expects a normal workload for Jefferson on Sunday. So, it's gonna be really good. I think it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a fun weekend. Hopefully, the Rams play better than they have before. So, really looking forward to this game. Even though it's also you always kind of dread going into 49ers week, but yeah. So I think that's gonna do it for this episode of East Coast Rams podcast.
The
A little bit
YouTube.
shorter. Well, sorry.
Also announcing our YouTube channel that we're
Go ahead and plug that
post
real quick.
Yeah, we're starting up a YouTube channel. We'll be throwing the pods up there if you guys want to subscribe and follow. We'll do some short video content on there too from time to time. We may end up doing a video podcast. That kind of depends on kind of how our schedules go. Me and Zach, we work full-time jobs, so it's hard sometimes to get together, but depending on how things go and all that fun stuff, we'll be doing some more video content, so you can follow that. We'll post updates on there too, and we're just trying to keep up a really good brand. Zach's been a great partner, and hopefully we can provide some good entertainment for you guys.
Yeah, and I think especially if you guys want us to do a video podcast, please share and subscribe. This podcast, the more people who are interested in the podcast, we are going to definitely put a lot more effort into this. But yeah, with that, it's kind of a shorter episode this week, just kind of preparing for the 49ers. And so that's going to conclude this week's episode of the East Coast Rams podcast. You can always send your questions and feedback to feedback@eastcoastrams.com or hit us up on Twitter. You can find our main podcast, or the podcast Twitter account is @EastCoastRams. And then our personal Twitters, mine is @ZachMayer and Ashton's is @RamsFanAshton1. Appreciate everyone who consistently converses with us on the Twitters. It's a lot of fun. We're having a lot of good conversations up there. And then everyone who's listening to the pod, it's just great. We're getting good feedback. It's really exciting, all the things that we get to do and we're looking forward to do. So if you please share this podcast with your friends and family, share this with other Rams fans, share this on Twitter, and let's keep spreading the word. This is a podcast for the fans, by the fans. We appreciate all the support we can get. So let's get this done on Sunday, get this 49ers curse away from us, and get the big W. So see you guys on Sunday, Ramley. Horns up.